Welcome, everyone. You are listening to Get Out of Your Own Way with me, April Yee, on Transformation Talk Radio. Get out of your way and get what you want through transformative self-care. I'm here to support you in getting out of your own way. So, what does getting in your own way look like? Well, how about letting other people define your value and worth, ignoring your body by not taking care of yourself, and people-pleasing? These are just a few ways I've gotten in my own way. In this show, I'll share new perspectives on self-care practices so you can discover options and choices for expanding what's possible for you and your life. In each episode, I have questions for you, and when you take the time to answer them, they'll help in building up your belief about yourself. I believe that when we get good with ourselves, we get good with our lives and the world. Get Out of Your Own Way starts now. Hi, everyone. I'm April Yee, and you are listening to Get Out of Your Own Way on Transformation Talk Radio, episode 4. The concepts I talk about in each episode are things I wish I learned sooner to support myself and get out of my own way. So I hope these ideas are coming to you when you need them. So today we're talking about why it can be so hard to make even positive changes in our lives. Have you ever felt frustrated because you have trouble making changes that you know will be in your best interest? I know I have. And so I'll share a quote from this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It says, "Your actions reveal how badly you want something. If you keep saying something is a priority, but you never act on it, then you don't really want it. It's time to have an honest conversation with yourself. Your actions reveal your true motivations." So, why do we say we want something, but we don't act on it? We might really want to make a change happen in our lives, but when it comes down to it, we don't take the action required to make that change. So, in the last episode, I talked about the self-awareness tool that I use with my clients and with myself to help them see the results they're currently creating in their lives. And this self-awareness tool is called the model. It has 5 components. So, circumstances trigger thoughts, thoughts create feelings, feelings drive our actions or inactions, and our actions or inactions create our results. And the results we get usually provide evidence for our thoughts. So I'll go through each of the components again. So circumstances are facts. They're neutral. They are usually not under our control. They're what someone else says, what someone else does, things like traffic or the weather. Thoughts are a phrase in our mind about the circumstance. So what did we make the circumstance mean? Feelings are a vibration in our body. What emotion do we feel when we think the thought? Actions are what we do or do not do when we feel a certain emotion. So how do we show up? And then results are what we create for ourselves from the actions or inactions we take. So what is the effect of these actions or inactions in our life? And the model can be really helpful in seeing what we're creating for ourselves. And there's another aspect of creating new results in our lives that we need to be aware of too. And this is called the Motivational Triad. And I'll be talking about that more in a minute. So when we feel frustrated because we have trouble making changes that we know will be in our best interest, instead of blaming ourselves or beating ourselves up for it, we can learn and understand why making even positive changes can be really hard and how we can overcome one of the major obstacles within ourselves that gets in the way of change and growth. So it's one of the ways that we get in our own way. So what is the motivational triad and how does it play into our lives? Animals, including humans, have a section of their brain, often called the primitive brain, or I like to call it the primitive brain. It's the back part of our brain in the brainstem, and it evolved for survival. And this part of our brain urges us to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and expend minimal effort. And the result of these three urges is called the motivational triad. A different part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the front of our brain, is the thinking part. And it's actually the part that differentiates humans from other animals. And our prefrontal cortex helps us plan, organize, reflect, and delay gratification so that we can make wise choices rather than reacting automatically. And so here's how the motivational triad and these parts of our brain can make it hard to make changes that we know will make our lives better. Because change is new and different, our primitive brain can't be efficient and expend minimal effort when we're implementing changes because doing something new requires extra effort. And this is why our primitive brain tells us to go back to doing something familiar, something that's easy. However, repeating familiar old behaviors often does not help us get the results that we want. So we sabotage and get in our own way by letting our primitive brain run the show and take the lead sometimes. It will always want to do what's comfortable, familiar, and easy. And our brain can be clever. There are ways that it's always playing into the motivational triad, but it might give other excuses like, I don't have enough time, or I'm too overwhelmed, or I didn't like the teacher, so I stopped going to the class, or my partner brought home treats, so I had to have some. And so those are all excuses for one of the aspects of the motivational triad. So, seeking pleasure is when my partner brought treats home, so I had to have some, even though maybe I want to stop eating as much sugar as I'm eating or try to not have snacks to lose weight. I don't like the teacher, so I stopped going to class. Could be an excuse for the class felt too hard and I was uncomfortable doing some of the things in the class. So I blamed me not liking the teacher for stopping attending that class. And that part is avoiding pain, that part of the motivational triad. And then the excuse, I don't have enough time, could just be, well, I want things to be easy. So I don't want to do this thing that requires time and effort. So at least one aspect of the motivational triad is always at play when we get in our own way. And we get in our own way when we don't take the action we know would be best for us to take because we're either seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, or wanting to expend minimal effort. So if our brain wants to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and expend minimal effort, we need to use our prefrontal cortex to make plans, organize, reflect, and delay gratification. And I mentioned this in the last episode about how the reason why we do anything is because of the way we think we'll feel. So we will do things to feel something or do things to avoid feeling something. So, how can we overcome the motivational triad? We can create a new motivational triad where the three things are to seek growth, embrace discomfort by letting it be hard, and expend massive effort wisely. And I want to offer that massive effort is taking action until we get the result we want. So when we're making life changes, it can be uncomfortable, like waking up earlier, eating less sugar, drinking less alcohol, reducing our time on social media, moving our bodies more, spending less money, speaking up for our values, or reaching out to someone new are all changes that can feel uncomfortable or scary in some way. I think one of the things could be we might feel we might be feeling afraid of being disappointed or rejected or defeated if we can't follow through on these things. And so our primitive brain wants instant gratification. So the seeking of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. And changing habits usually doesn't give us instant pleasure. Plus, the discomfort can cause resistance that stops us from making positive changes that have long-term benefits. So, do you ever notice that when you first set a new goal, you're pretty excited about it, you make plans for it, you start doing it, and then you don't see or feel results right away? And we start out motivated because we want to see or feel the results. But when they don't happen, quote unquote, fast enough, we start thinking something like, this is too hard. I'm doing so much and nothing is happening. And we might say this after 2 or 3 days of doing something new. And is 2 or 3 days realistically enough time to see results? Maybe, depending on what your goal is, but most of the time we want to give up too quickly because we're not seeing results fast enough. And we start thinking, this is too hard. And it will be hard. So, creating new results that maybe we've never created before is hard. So, we want to let it be hard and uncomfortable during this time. So that is one of the new parts of the new motivational triad, to embrace discomfort and let it be hard. Because when we think something should be easy and it feels hard, we're like, well, then something's wrong if this should be easy, but it's hard. So, but if we let it be hard, then we're like, okay, this is hard. This is part of that process of creating the new result that I want. So, how do we push past our discomfort? Just trying harder to make positive changes often doesn't work. And this is because our primitive brain will create urges to avoid discomfort and do what's familiar. So rather than trying to suppress these feelings, we can allow the urge to be there and feel it without reacting to it. So, an urge to do something familiar would be like if you're used to having 2 glasses of wine or 3 glasses of wine, and you want to start drinking less alcohol, only drinking 1 glass of wine will be very unfamiliar. And our brain will be like, well, I've always drank 3 glasses of wine. So let's just go back to doing what's familiar and easy. So there will be an urge when you made a plan to only drink 1 glass of wine, there will be an urge to drink the second glass. There might be an urge to drink a third glass. And so we can allow that urge to be there and feel it. And it will be uncomfortable to feel an urge without reacting to it, which means giving into the urge. So giving into the urge would be having the second glass, having the third glass. So we can, how do we put this all into practice? We can use our prefrontal cortex to make a plan with the understanding that our primitive brain will try to interfere with that plan. And instead of wanting, wishing, or hoping to make some kind of change, we need to decide that we want to make that change. And we can create a plan to make that change after we decide that we want to do it. And so, one example of creating a plan is to make a decision 24 hours ahead of time about something that you want to do differently. You can write down your plan and maybe even tell a supportive person about what you want to do differently. And when the time comes to follow your plan, your primitive brain might get really loud and you might start to think, well, I don't feel like it, or I don't want to, or it feels too hard. So allow yourself to notice these thoughts and the urge to either not do your plan like the way you thought you would, or allow the urge to be there or the thought to be there where you think it's too hard, and just and let it be hard. So you can allow yourself to notice the urge to do what feels good in the moment, usually, which is usually something familiar and easy, while choosing to stay with your plan to do what is best for you in the long run, which is hard and can be uncomfortable in the moment. And you can prepare yourself with encouraging messages to resist the urges you feel so you can stay with your plan day by day, hour by hour, moment by moment, and second by second. Urges from your primitive brain are more likely to fade away if you are not fighting against them. And you can activate your thinking brain by asking yourself, do I really need to change my plan right now? Will changing my plan leave me feeling better or worse? And so I'll give some examples of how we want to make changes and how urges will pop up and how we can stick with our plan. So, suppose you have a strong urge to buy something new that you really don't need, and you have a goal of either not spending as much money or just not spending impulsively. So you can notice the urgent impulse to buy something right away while sticking to your spending plan. You can remind yourself, I made a plan to wait 24 hours from when I feel like getting something before I buy it, even if it's on sale. Is this truly an emergency or can it wait? Another example is, suppose you feel like driving someplace when you have made a plan to walk. You can feel the urge to get there more quickly with less effort and then stick to your walking plan. You can tell yourself, right now, I really don't feel like walking, and I know I'll feel better later if I walk rather than drive. And what if you really feel like looking at your social media when you made a plan to get an important project done? You can allow yourself to feel the urge to check just one post while deciding to resist that wish and stick with your plan. You can tell yourself, my primitive brain is familiar with the instant entertainment and feeling of connection that social media provides. And my thinking brain knows that I will be relieved and have much more satisfaction when this project is done. And so resisting urges might seem impossible at first. And as you keep practicing how to accept these feelings while not letting them make decisions for you, doing this can get easier. And I think that for us to have the model as a tool for self-awareness in order to recognize what we're thinking and feeling and how our feelings drive our actions and how our actions or inactions create our results is a really helpful tool. And having the concept of the motivational triad also in mind can help us see when we might be making excuses because something feels too hard or feels uncomfortable when we have a long-term goal where taking action will move us steadily in that direction of the goal, even when it feels hard, even when it feels uncomfortable. And so, my message to you today is that we can start getting out of our own way by being aware of the motivational triad, which is at play a lot in our lives, usually every day. And you can remind yourself that your primitive brain is just wanting to keep you safe. It really does have good intentions because, like I mentioned earlier, our primitive brain evolved to help us survive. But it's not helpful to you in achieving your goals if it keeps having you get in your own way and not take the actions you know are best. So our primitive brain, wanted to keep us safe and in the cave back when there were saber-toothed tigers or woolly mammoths roaming around, and we needed to, choose to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and expend minimal energy. But now, since there are less threatening things, we actually do make things into bigger threats than they are. And so our primitive brain does come into play a lot because of that. And so we just need to remember that the new motivational triad is to seek growth, embrace discomfort, and let it be hard, and expend massive effort wisely. And so I think that once we can remember these things, we can see when we might be getting in our own way, when our brain might be trying to sabotage us. And we can use our prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain, to say, hey, I hear you, primitive brain. Your opinion is noted, and I'm going to do it anyway. I'm willing to feel uncomfortable and let it be hard right now in order to move towards what I really want. I'm so glad you joined me for this episode of Get Out of Your Own Way. To go even deeper, join me for Self-Care Sundays, monthly drop-in sessions, where you can find out more at thehealingmodalities.com. You can also sign up for my weekly Self-Care Seeds newsletter there. And join me again for Get Out of Your Own Way every other Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Central, and 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. Next time on Get Out of Your Own Way, I'll be talking about how to feel our feelings. If the only reason why we do anything is because of the way we think we'll feel, we can see how important our feelings are. So, are you able to name your feelings when you feel them? And what would happen if you were willing to feel any emotion, including the uncomfortable ones? How might your life be different? Have a great week, and I'll see you next time. You have been listening to Get Out of Your Own Way. Get out of your way and get what you want through transformative self-care with me, April Yee. Tune in every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. In each episode, I present new questions that support you in building up your beliefs about yourself. To connect with me or for more information, you can email me at thehealingmodalities@gmail.com or visit my website, thehealingmodalities.com. See you soon.